Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today we're going to have a little Photoshop fun by creating a dripping effect with a photo that you can learn and then integrate into your own designs. It's really not difficult to do and only takes a few steps to complete. So if you're all set, let's get to it. Now before we get further into the video, I just wanted to say thank you to all those who have subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate all of you, and the comments and feedback I've been receiving gives me the drive to create more content to share with you all. I do have to say though, that there are still a number of viewers, roughly 30%, who have been watching my videos but haven't subscribed yet. If you fit into that category, don't be shy. Join this community and smash that subscribe button. We'd really love to have you as part of our community. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe, and I hope you enjoy what you see here today and learn something to add to your arsenal of design making tools. Now, let's get on with the video. Okay, so here we are. We've created a canvas 4500 by 5400 pixels, and I've imported the picture of the model that I'm going to be using. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of this bland gray border background. So I'm going to choose select, and I'm going to go down to subject. And I'll wait for Photoshop to do the selection around the model. Just take a few moments here. Alright, you can see the marching ants appeared around her. But if I had to hit delete on the keyboard, we're going to delete the model. We don't want that. So I'm going to hit Control Z on the keyboard. And then I'm going to invert the selection. And to do that, you can use the keyboard shortcut Control Shift and the letter I. Once you've done that, the selection is going to be reversed. And when I hit the delete key on the keyboard, I get rid of that gray background. Alright, so now we're going to hit Control D on the keyboard to deselect our selection. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to import the dripping effect template that I had created. Alright, so I'm just going to grab it. It's off the screen here, and I'm going to click and drag it into Photoshop. Alright, and as you can see here, it's much larger than what we want, so we need to do a bit of resizing. So let's bring it down a little bit. And then I can hit Control T on the keyboard, and I can start dragging in the handles until I get the dripping effect on the model that I'm looking for. Alright, and let's see, I'm going to decrease it a little bit from here, bring it down a bit. You have to play around with it. Obviously, every single picture is going to be a bit different, but this is where you have fun with the design. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Enter on the keyboard to commit to that change. All right. Now I want to clip this piece out of the model. Now to do that, I'm going to hover over the layer called Paint Dripping Template. And whilst holding the Control key on the keyboard, I'm going to click in the icon area here. And that's going to make a selection. As you can see, we got the marching ants appearing right there. Now, whilst that is happening, I'm going to click on the layer below, which is the mockup of the model. And then whilst that is active, I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard. Now, that should have removed that selection from the picture of the model. And to make sure that that's happened, we're going to turn off the paint dripping template. So we're going to turn that off, and we're going to hit Control D on the keyboard to deselect. Now, as you can see here, we've gotten rid of that part of the model. If I turn off the background, alright, we can see that she's been clipped quite nicely. And now what I want to do is I want to remove the rest of the unwanted part of the photo. And to do that, I hit E on the keyboard to select the eraser. I select a nice large brush by hitting the right bracket key on the keyboard, and I simply erase the part that I don't need anymore. Alright, now let's get rid of this piece here too as well. Okay, now let's turn back on the background layer. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to give a bit of a drop shadow effect to this. So in order to do that, I'm going to right click on the mockup layer, and I'm going to choose blending options. And then once the layer style window is open, I'm going to go down to drop shadow. Alright, and here are the numbers that I used. Alright, the blend mode is linear burn. I left the opacity at 100 and the angle is at 90. I chose a distance of 15, and I left the spread and the size both to 0. Now, you can choose and select whatever numbers, whatever configuration you want according to the photo that you're going to use. What we're looking for here is a bit of a drop shadow effect in the paint dripping area, all right? And for this particular photo, this gave the best effect. So I'm going to click on OK to commit. Now what I don't want is I don't want to have the drop shadow effect around the arms here. Now, in order to get rid of that, what I normally do is I duplicate the layer of the mockup. So I'm hitting Control J on the keyboard. I'm going to turn off the effects for that particular layer. I'm going to create a masking layer for the original layer. So let's click on the masking layer icon here. And whilst that's active, I'm going to hit B on the keyboard to select my brush, making sure that black is the foreground color. And then I can increase the size of the brush, and I'm going to start painting over the portions where I don't want the drop shadow effect to appear. Okay, so basically around the arms and on the head. Alright, and basically that has done it. Alright, I've still kept the drop shadow effect down over here, as you can see over here. And now to finish it off, we want to create a nice background layer. So I'm going to go to the background layer down here. I'm going to click on the padlock to turn it off so that I can make this layer editable. I'm going to right click on it, then choosing blending options, I'm going to go down to gradient overlay. Alright, now I had already gone in and created a background for this, which obviously complemented this photo, but to give you an idea of how I went about doing it, I clicked on the gradient color picker, and then on the two edges of the gradient, I clicked on the first color, and I went ahead and I selected a nice yellow from the jacket of the model. And then I did the same thing with the sort of pinkish purple, which was roughly around over here. I selected that, all right, and obviously when I chose OK, I created this nice gradient layer, which I'm very happy with. Alright, so we're going to click on OK for that. Alright, so what we want to do now is we want to center the model. So I'm going to select both layers of the model. I've selected the first one, and whilst holding the Shift key, I'm going to click on the second one. Alright, and now both layers are active, and I can click and drag, and both are going to move together. And I'm going to put her roughly centered over there, which I'm very happy with. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a layer. Now, what I plan on doing is doing a bit of a spray paint effect behind her. So I'm going to click on the layer 0 here, and then I'm going to go down to this plus symbol here, and I'm going to create a new layer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working solely on this layer. And everything that I put on here is going to come behind the model. Alright, so we're going to hit B on the keyboard, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find a brush which has a bit of a spray paint effect, and let's choose this one over here. Okay, and you can see that the outline of the spray paint effect appears on the canvas. So if you're not happy with that, you just go back and select another one until you're happy with it. Or else what you can do is you can try and find some spray paint brushes online that are obviously free for commercial use, and you can download them and obviously import them into Photoshop. But for this purpose, I'm quite happy with this one, so I'm going to click outside the canvas here, and I'm going to hit the right bracket button to enlarge it a bit. Now, what I had done too as well beforehand, as you can see here, I've got a yellow in the foreground and a red in the background. Now the red comes from the model's shirt, and again the yellow comes from the model's jacket here. So with the yellow set as the foreground color, I'm just going to go around, and it doesn't matter, remember I'm going to be painting behind her, so it doesn't matter if part of the spray paint effect is going over her face. What we want to try and do is create an effect. So I'm going to put it down over here just below her arm, and I'm going to click once to create that yellow effect, and I'll do the same thing on the other. I might go in a little bit like that, and then I'm going to hit X on the keyboard to switch the colors. So now red is the foreground color, and I'm going to increase the size of the spray paint, and I'm going to paint over here, and I'm going to do another one over here. Okay, and you can tweak it and increase the size of the paint brushes, make them smaller, make them larger, add more paint to the background, add less paint. It's basically all up to you. Alright, so for this particular example, I'm quite happy with that, so I'm going to leave it like it is. Alright, and if I didn't want to have the background color and I just wanted to save it with the paint and maybe create a sticker out of it, I'm obviously going to turn off the background layer so that I get a transparent layer, and then obviously I hit Control Shift S on the keyboard and save it as a transparent PNG. Alright, so what if you don't have Photoshop? Well, you can still do this, you can still do this effect, and you can use an online website called Photopea, and you can actually do all of these steps that I've done in Photoshop on Photopea as well. Let's get to that now. Okay everyone, here we are in Photopea, and what I've done is I've already imported the photo of the model, and I went ahead and I removed the background layer. In Photopea, to quickly remove the background layer, you can select the magic wand tool and then just click anywhere in the background so that you can get those marching ants bordering your photo, and obviously click in the arm area. Obviously you can magnify and obviously get in and fix the other areas too as well. And once you're happy with it, you can just hit delete on the keyboard, and obviously the background layer gets deleted. So we're going to hit Control D on the keyboard to deselect the selection. Okay, now what you then want to do is you want to import your paint dripping template from whichever folder you have it saved in. I already went ahead and did that, so I'm going to make that layer active and visible. Alright, now in Photopea, to free transform, you do not use the keyboard shortcuts Control T. Alright, what you need to do instead is you can either mouse over to edit and come down to free transform, or else you can use the keyboard shortcut Alt Control plus T. So I'm going to select that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the handles until I get the paint drippings to a section where I am happy with. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag this down a little bit more so that I can really enhance the dripping effect. And once I'm happy with it, I hit enter on the keyboard. Okay, now we need to remove this selection from the model photo beneath. So just as we did in Photoshop, we're going to first rasterize the paint dripping template. And then whilst mousing over the icon for the layer, I'm going to hold the Control key on the keyboard and I'm going to left click once to make the selection. Then I'm going to click on the background layer and then I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard. And what that's going to do is it's going to delete the paint dripping templates from the background layer. So if I hit Control D on the keyboard to deselect and I hide the paint dripping template, I now see that the portion of the paint dripping template has been removed from the model below. And then it's just a question of choosing the eraser tool, and then with an appropriate brush you're just going to go over the parts that you don't want to keep, and you can zoom in and maybe make the brush size smaller using the left bracket key on the keyboard, and we're going to get rid of that piece over there. Okay, that's looking really good at the moment. Okay, once I'm happy with that, I choose the move tool and I'm going to drag the model down to about center, to an area which I'm happy with. It's time to add a gradient background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the colors back to the default, and I'm going to choose X on the keyboard to make white as my foreground color. And then I'm going to create a new layer by clicking on this icon down below, and I'm going to obviously drag it down to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to rename this layer to model, and I'm going to rename this one to background so that I'll know on which layers I'm working on. Okay, and then once the background layer is active, I'm going to fill the background with white. So I'm going to hit G on the keyboard to toggle the paint bucket tool over here, and then I'm going to click anywhere in the background area, and if I had to turn off the model, we can see that the entire layer has been filled with white. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to add a gradient overlay to the background. So I'm going to mouse down to the bottom over here and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to choose gradient overlay, excuse me. Alright, and then I'm going to choose my gradient here, and again, like I did in Photoshop, I chose the yellow and the pinkish purple from the jacket of the model. Okay, and once I'm happy with the colors that I've chosen, I close the window. what I did was I chose align with layer and I chose reverse, and I reduced the opacity down to 42% so that the white will come through and it gives me a nice gradient background that I can obviously continue working from. So then if I want to put the paint splashes in the background, it'll come through nice and bright. Alright, so we're happy with that. We're going to choose OK. It's time to put in a bit of a paint splash effect behind the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the background layer, and then I'm going to create another layer on top of that one, and we're going to rename that to Paint Splatter. Okay, now Photopea has very basic brushes installed on it. If you do want to add more brushes to it, you can find brushes online and obviously install them into Photopea so that you can use accordingly. But for this example, we're going to use the brushes that came with it. So we're going to choose B on the keyboard, and I'm going to click on it, and we have this brush over here, which is set to a size of 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase it to around 500. Okay, you want to be more precise, you can just click over here, delete those and type in 500. And after selecting 500 as the pixel size, I want to make sure that yellow is the color in the foreground, and we're going to go behind the model and we're going to start painting. Okay, and since we are on the paint splatter layer behind her, whatever we paint is not going to affect the model layer, it's just going to show up behind. Alright, and what we can do is we can also put one more over here. So we're going to choose a nice red color from the model's top. I'm going to choose OK on the keyboard. We'll click on OK. And then we're just going to paint in different areas too as well, to give it that little bit of a painter effect behind her. Okay, so you can basically play around with the different brushes and the different color styles that's behind her, and obviously taking a little bit more time to refine the edges around the model to make sure that you get it nice and clean and you get rid of all this extra white over here too as well. But for the purposes of this video tutorial, I wanted to show you that you don't necessarily need to have Photoshop to be able to do this. You can do it in Photopea. Now the last thing that we want to do is we want to create that drop shadow effect on the model in the dripping area. So we're going to go back to the model. We're going to create a new layer style, and we're going to choose drop shadow. Okay, and in this particular case we want linear burn, we want black for our drop shadow, 100% opacity, and just like in Photoshop we're going to choose a distance of 5 and 0 for the spread and the size. Okay, again, as with Photoshop, you might be using a different photo and these numbers might need to be changed. It's all up to you. You can change the angle, play around with it, be creative, and have fun with it. Alright, so we're going to click on OK to accept that. Okay, and then we're going to duplicate it by hitting Ctrl J on the keyboard. Now we have the model copy. We're going to turn off the effects, and then on the model layer below we're going to create a mask layer, and then we're going to go back to the brush tool, but this time we're going to change the brush and we're going to make it into a solid brush. We're going to increase the size of it a little bit more, let's say up to 207, that's fine, and we're going to start brushing over the model where we want to remove the drop shadow effect. Alright, and you just play around with it until you get it to a state that you're happy with it. So there you have it. Now that I have my drop shadow effect, my design is basically finished. If I wanted to add a bit of text, I could do so too as well. Alright, and then I can upload it to platforms like Redbubble, TeePublic, Zazzle, Society6, Merch, any of those platforms that you enjoy using in the hopes that you can land another sale. Now, you don't necessarily need to limit yourself to photos with respect to this effect. You can even do it with cliparts. And what I did is I went ahead in Photoshop before starting this video tutorial, and I created some basic examples just to give you an idea of how versatile this particular design is and what you can do with different paint splatter effects behind it. So we have this one over here. If I turn it off, we have this little guy over here flexing his biceps. It looks like he's melting down. It'd be actually really cool to put a bit of a candle behind it and make it look like, you know, he's melting all over the candle. And like I said before, you can even do it with cliparts too as well. So we had one from bear, and we had a tree sort of melting away, and then finally we had a bird. He's flying, and it looks like that he's melting away too as well. He's got a concerned look on his face. Can only imagine what kind of caption somebody with a bit of creative flair could actually do with it. Alright, so that's basically it for this video tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed watching it and that you've learned something new. Whether you have Photoshop or Photopea, you can do this. You can use it to create awesome designs. And well, until the next time, be safe, be well. We'll talk again real soon. Bye for now.